liver or muscle gives you glucose? Liver or muscle gives you glucose? Liver, absolutely wonderful. We will see why muscle is not a source of glucose. What do they lack? You already know muscles lack which receptors? You already know muscle lacks one receptors. Which receptors muscles lack? Anyone? Glucose 6-phosphate is not a receptor. Glucose 6-phosphate is a intermediate. I'm asking receptor. Which receptors muscle lack? Glucagon receptors. You remember in signal transduction, glucagon receptors are absent in the muscle. Yes, so I'm talking about receptor. So glucose 6-phosphate will not be a right answer. Glucose 6-phosphate is an intermediate. Please be mindful in selecting your answer. More selective, better grades. Remember, I told you can't depend on glycogen after a day of fasting. Who takes over? Gluconeogenesis. Unfortunately, I am teaching gluconeogenesis before glycogen metabolism, but glycogen cannot be a reliable source after how many? A day of fasting. But yes, anything highlighted in green is maintaining glucose in low insulin state. And also, do you burn more lipid more than carbs in a low insulin state? Do you burn lipid more than carb in a low insulin state? Both are important for you to keep in mind when you're doing low insulin state. Also, low insulin state is not left. What is left? Sorry, too many a box is open for me. Left is insulin function, which is moving, it's a well-fed state, high insulin state. I'm talking about gluconeogenesis. So gluconeogenesis is left or right? What is gluconeogenesis? Left state or right state? Anyone? Right state. Be mindful of that. Left state is insulin, which pushes glucose from circulation to tissue. We are not talking about well-fed state here. When it's gluconeogenesis, it's right. Low insulin means pushing glucose from tissue to circulation. And which tissues are responsible for pushing glucose into circulation? Give me 2 tissue at least, which will give glucose to the circulation. Liver, only liver. Anything else that give glucose? Only liver? Anything else? Not RBC. RBC lack mitochondria. RBC cannot do gluconeogenesis because gluconeogenesis is cytosolic mitochondrial. Pancreas, no. Pancreas secrete insulin. Adipose tissue supports gluconeogenesis, not forms. I'm talking about tissue. Very good. Kidney cortex. Liver and kidney cortex are producers of glucose. Adipose can be an answer to support gluconeogenesis, not a primary. Primary first, secondary later. Adipose tissue fat will support gluconeogenesis. But who is the producer of glucose? It is liver and kidney cortex. So you're moving right when it's glucose production, that is low insulin state, pushing glucose from tissue to circulation. Did we talk? I'm talking about gluconeogenesis. Glycogen maintains glucose only up to a day of fasting. After that, it's not a reliable source of glucose. Who takes over? Gluconeogenesis. Did I talk about key players, primary players that will turn on gluconeogenesis? Anyone? Did I also tell you, though it's a low insulin pathway, gluconeogenesis, but what are the primary players, hormones I told you to relate to glucagon and cortisol? Look at that. Cortisol acts here, PepCK. Now, when I say cortisol acts at PepCK, so you should know gluconeogenesis enzyme. So let's go there. Right enzyme, right pathway, right state, right primary clinical presentation, right step in enzyme deficiency. Everything is primary. The more and more you go secondary, less grades on foundation 2. The more and more you stick to the primary players, primary activators, primary step, primary presentation, better grades. Please don't get distracted by the secondary players or presentation in the body. Now, which one are we doing today? Although I will do glycogen first, but first I'm teaching you gluconeogenesis. So do you relate step 6 to gluconeogenesis? Do you relate step? Yes, you relate step. And what's the enzyme here? What's the enzyme here? What's the enzyme at step 6? Step 6 enzyme. Anyone? Step 6 enzyme, glucose 6 phosphatase. Very important physiologically, very important clinically. Also, is it a well-fed state? No, 6 is not a well-fed state pathway. It's a low insulin step. So are you clearly identifying how I am making you, review these pathway? Yes. Now let's look at the key points here. Absolutely important. I've summarized points. You can go back and watch Dr. Binstock's lecture, how she has addressed them. But don't forget this focus. It's a low insulin pathway. And somebody said RBC is a source of glucose. Can RBC form glucose? Because mature RBC lack mitochondria. And this is a cytosolic as well as mitochondrial process. So should you be aware that is my pathway cytosolic? Is my pathway mitochondrial? Is my pathway both? Absolutely. So what is TCA? Purely? TCA is purely and purely what? Cytosolic mitochondrial. This is both. So RBC cannot be a source of gluconeogenesis. Liver and kidney cortex, you all said. Someone said kidney cortex, absolutely wonderful source of glucose. Please keep the rate limiting enzyme in the right pathway if you want to do well in foundation 2. Now, is acetyl-CoA a source or a substrate to glucose formation? Is it a substrate of gluconeogenesis? Never. But please remember, acetyl-CoA is a big turn on for gluconeogenesis starting point. What is the starting enzyme for gluconeogenesis? What's the starting enzyme for gluconeogenesis? Can you give me one starting point? You know that now the gluconeogenesis pathway will be on pyruvate carboxylase. Absolutely wonderful. Acetyl-CoA is a big turn on, obligatory turn on for pyruvate carboxylase. And that carboxylase, any carboxylase though, please know that. Any carboxylase in your body requires which vitamin? Any carboxylase. Biotin. There are some exceptions. We will learn them later on. But most carboxylases require biotin. Now, remember, you cannot do genesis without ATP. Now, is this a low insulin pathway? Is this a low insulin pathway? Is gluconeogenesis? So how will you get acetyl-CoA and ATP to turn on gluconeogenesis? By burning what? Can you complete that? In a low insulin state, what will you burn? Fat. Please know fat burning in the liver is a prerequisite to start gluconeogenesis. And fructose 2,6-bisphosphate. Remember fructose 2,6-bisphosphate was turning on? Fructose 2,6-bisphosphate was turning on glycolysis. So what will it do to gluconeogenesis? Naturally, what will it do to slow down? No pathway is turned off, please. One is active over the other. Slow down. It will not turn it off. It's just slow down. Also, clinically do relate, please. Absolutely important. So enzyme deficiency of gluconeogenesis. What should be the primary presentation? Enzyme deficiency gluconeogenesis. What do you think should be the primary presentation? Hypoglycemia. I don't want you to go like that. Gluconeogenesis is not happening, so there's no glucose, so there might be no energy, so there is a delay, there is inability to perform activity of daily life, not indirect, direct. Gluconeogenesis is a source of glucose. So primary presentation should be hypoglycemia, not that secondary. If glucose is not there, they might not have energy. You understand my point? Don't keep going on and on. Stick to the primary presentation. Absolutely wonderful. And do chronic alcoholics suffer from hypoglycemia? Do they have? Yes. Please ask yourself first the primary signs and symptoms you relate to a condition or enzyme deficiency, and please don't forget to ask yourself a why. So it's a low insulin pathway, but don't forget what's the prerequisite to turn on gluconeogenesis. You have to burn what? Fat. First, you have to burn fat to turn on gluconeogenesis, then gluconeogenesis starts. You very well know that fructose 2,6-bisphosphate turns on or activates or slows down glycolysis. Fructose 2,6-bisphosphate activates glycolysis. Absolutely wonderful. So slows down gluconeogenesis. Then you should be very well aware of 2 cytosolic. This is important too in chronic alcoholics, in anaerobic glycolysis, and 2 mitochondrial fate of pyruvate. Don't forget that they are, again, compartmentalization I have mentioned here. Please, I have some of the line diagrams, make use of them, right? They are not AI generated, I drew them myself. So cytosolic and mitochondrial compartmentalization is important. 2 cytosolic and 2 mitochondrial pathways. So tell me 3 or 4, which one you relate to gluconeogenesis and a low insulin step? 3, please be very mindful. And remember, gluconeogenesis is a low insulin pathway. To turn on this step, how will you get acetyl-CoA and ATP? To turn on this step, how will you get acetyl-CoA and as well as ATP? By burning? By burning what? Fat. Absolutely wonderful. And why are you doing that? Why do you need to burn? Why do you need to burn fat? Sorry. Why do you need to burn fat to get acetyl-CoA and ATP to turn on gluconeogenesis? Because remember, in low insulin state, is this step working? In low insulin state, is this step active? No. So you need to understand that the fourth step is a well-fed state step. And what's the enzyme here? What's the enzyme here? Give me the enzyme to fourth step. PDH complex. Very good. It's not giving you acetyl-CoA. So who will burn to give you acetyl-CoA and ATP to turn on gluconeogenesis? Burning fat is a prerequisite where in the liver to turn on this turning point of gluconeogenesis. Also, please know now where this, instead of, I told you to, yes, draw the outline of glycolysis and TCA, it will help. But gluconeogenesis, no. Just know where these substrates are converging. So tell me, is glycerol converging at the same intermediate as lactate and alanine? No, glycerol is converging up to form glucose. Lactate and alanine are converging into pyruvate. So is glycerol converging into pyruvate to form glucose? Is glycerol converging? So please understand that there is a source. I have drawn a line diagram. Then there is a substrate. Then there is an intermediate, and then you form glucose. So substrates are which one? Glycerol, completed. What are the substrate? Glycerol. What else? Can you alanine and lactate? And then there's an intermediate. Lactate and alanine join what? DHAP or pyruvate? Lactate and alanine join DHAP or pyruvate? Pyruvate to form glucose. So just knowing where they converge. Also, please know this NADH to NAD. NADH being regenerated here or NADH being formed when you are doing gluconeogenesis, because I will connect later on with alcoholics. Remember these 2 steps where NADH is being formed. NADH is being formed rather than used in gluconeogenesis step. NADH is being formed, right? We will see and we will learn chronic alcoholics here. So are you aware what I am trying to you know, how I'm trying to, you to know this pathway? You saw it's low insulin pathway, then rate limiting enzyme, compartmentalization, primary turn on, why you are burning fat in the liver in a low insulin state to turn on gluconeogenesis. Now, some students think gluconeogenesis is a reverse of glycolysis. No, you have to bypass these 3 irreversible steps. So, 1, 2, and 3 irreversible steps. So who bypasses pyruvate kinase step? Give me the enzyme quickly. Who bypasses the pyruvate kinase of glycolysis? Carboxylase as well as carboxylase, which is 1, as well as PepCK. And then there's a phosphatase at 3, phosphatase at 4. Where is glucose 6-phosphatase? 3 or 4? 3 or 4, glucose 6-phosphatase? 4. So what are the key enzyme? 1, pyruvate carboxylase. 2, PepCK. 3, there's the fructose phosphatase. 4th is the glucose phosphatase. All these 4 enzymes help in forming glucose. So glucose is not a reverse of glycolysis. You have to bypass these 3 irreversible steps. Also, did I tell you that lactate and alanine join where? Where do lactate and alanine join? Pyruvate, but whereas glycerol does not join pyruvate, glycerol joins up. right? This is also shown in the next slide. So where they are joining, just be mindful rather than actually drawing these reactions. Yes. So just a second, because I have your chats on and everything is on my this thing. So let's see, where are we? Give me a minute. Okay. Okay. Wait, too many boxes on here. Um, okay, now I'm good. I have to move it everywhere. Okay. Okay, great. So again, what are we doing? Yes, we are identifying the substrate. Why not? Lactate, alanine, and glycerol. Did we identify them? Where did lactate and alanine join? Lactate and alanine join pyruvate, whereas glycerol join up at DHAP to form glucose. Just that they are joining at different time. Also that in each one of these steps, NADH is produced. I will connect that with alcoholics. I hope this is helping. Are you following my pace, everyone? Are you following my pace? Great. I think I'm just trying to do a review. So see, there is a source, there's a substrate, there's an intermediate, and then glucose. So lactate and alanine join pyruvate, but not glycerol. Lastly, also, this also helps you. Most of the glycolysis in your body is anaerobic, actually. So if too much lactate accumulates in your body, we would all be in lactic acidosis. But what is gluconeogenesis doing? So what is good about gluconeogenesis? It is helping in reutilizing what? What is gluconeogenesis doing? It's helping in reutilizing lactate. Also, clinically, I'll ask you one quick question. If you have a patient with hypoglycemia and the patient responds to infusion of alanine, which source is missing? If you have a patient coming to you with hypoglycemia but responds well with infusion of alanine, which source is missing? Yes, skeletal muscle proteolysis or skeletal muscle giving alanine is missing, right? Does that make sense? So this tree also helps you connect clinically. What's the source? What is the substrate? What is the intermediate it's converging into? And finally, glucose. Please know, muscle is a source of lactate as well as alanine to form glucose. So don't forget to start the state, the substrate, intermediate, they are converging and forming glucose. But it's never the other way around. Lactate from muscle flow to liver and glucose flows from liver back to muscle. It's not the other way around. So what is this cycle known as? Lactate from muscle to liver, glucose from Cori cycle. Very good, very good. You're at good pace. I like that. I like everybody's answering. That's what you should be, but you still have time. So lactate, alanine, glycerol as source, as substrate, they converge into different intermediates to form glucose. Keep an eye on that. So you know well, at least you don't need to draw it in and out. Also, just as muscle is a source of lactate, muscle is also a source of alanine to form glucose. It's also not the other way around. Alanine from muscle flows to liver and glucose from liver flows back to muscle. Now, Cori cycle and alanine cycle, they are active in a well-fed state or a low insulin state. Cori cycle and glucose-alanine cycle, where muscle is a source of lactate and alanine respectively, they are active in a low insulin state. So trying to understand these, trying to understand these processes also, when they are supporting gluconeogenesis, yes, they are on in a low insulin state. Right? So this is the summary of gluconeogenesis, very simple. It is not a reverse of glycolysis. You have to bypass the three reversible steps. So first one, bypassing pyruvate kinase is pyruvate carboxylase. Two is PEPCK. Three is fructose phosphatase, 1,6-bis phosphatase. And four is glucose 6-phosphatase. Glucose 6-phosphatase has a lot of physiological and clinical implication. Number one, glucose 6-phosphate is mitochondrial. That's why this pathway is cytosolic as well as mitochondrial. It's a common enzyme for, I will finish glycogen and you will know, but can you tell me it's a common enzyme for? Can you be specific that glucose 6-phosphatase is a common enzyme for which two pathways? Though I have not done glycogen yet. Anyone? Glycogenolysis and as well as gluconeogenesis in the liver. Glycogen breakdown and gluconeogenesis in the liver, it's a common enzyme. So fourth step is fourth step of gluconeogenesis, which is the last step, is catalyzed by glucose 6 phosphatase. This is a mitochondrial enzyme. It's responsible to release free glucose. It's a common pathway for gluconeogenesis and glycogen breakdown in the liver, and its deficiency leads to with GST 1 to 5. Though there is a 6, but Dr. Winstock has mentioned only 1 to 5, 1 GST. So glucose 6 phosphatase, physiological as well as clinical implication. Now, look at this, the difference. Step 4 defect, will you see lactic acidosis? Step 4 defect, will you see lactic acidosis? 4 is what enzyme? Step 4 defect, will you see? Yes, you will see. Who said no? Step 4 defect, you will see lactic acidosis because intermediates above the block, in any defect, intermediates above the block are high or low? High. So step 4 defect, you see lactic acidosis. But what happens to glucose here? High or low? Step 4 defect, you see lactic acidosis. But what happens to 3 step? Is it turned on big time in step 4? Step 4 defect? That no, no. Again, in step 4 defect, what an enzyme is this? PDH deficiency. Do you see lactic acidosis first of all? In PDH deficiency, do you see lactic acidosis? Since this step is defective now, which step is turned on big time? Step 3. So will you see hyperglycemia in PDH deficiency? Will you see hyperglycemia in PDH deficiency? I want you to relate 4 to TCA cycle and 3 to gluconeogenesis. Absolutely wonderful. So fourth step defect may have lactic acidosis as well as hyperglycemia. But look at this. 3-step defect. Will it have lactic acidosis? Anyone? 3-step defect. Will it have lactic acidosis like PDH deficiency? Yes, but what will be different here? Will you see hyperglycemia or hypoglycemia in 3? 3 will be hypoglycemia. So you need to understand that gluconeogenesis enzyme or step 3 when defective, you will have hypoglycemia. When step 4 is defective, tell me what should be the primary presentation? Primary. Not hyperglycemia is secondary. For 3 defect, primary presentation is hypoglycemia, but 4 defect, you can say lactic acidosis. I want something more, something more. What is low in step 4 defect? Which cycle is going haywire in step 4 defect? TCA. So tell me hypotonia, failure to thrive, failure to do activity of daily life should be primary presentation of 4, not hyperglycemia. Primary presentation of 3 should be hypoglycemia. I'm not asking you not to do other symptoms, but don't first forget primary so you are not distracted in the question stem. 3-step defect, hypoglycemia. 4th step defect, primary should be hypotonia or inability to perform activities of daily life. So please relate 4 to TCA and 3 to gluconeogenesis. Now, alcohol. Alcohol consumption have high ratio of what? What's wrong with alcohols? High ratio of NADH to NAD. Though this reaction is reversible in your body, what does it become in case of chronic alcohol consumption? This reversible reaction becomes irreversible. How will it be irreversible? Will it go more forward or backward? How will it be irreversible? Will it go more forward? So what do you see in chronic alcohol consumption? What do you see in chronic lactic acidosis? And also, since this reaction becomes irreversible, can these individuals who are in chronic alcohol consumption use lactate as a source of glucose? No, and that's why they also have, sorry, apart from lactic acidosis, they also have apart from lactic acidosis, chronic alcohol use also have hypoglycemia. See, if you didn't know normal, that to form lactate, purpose is to regenerate NAD. To reutilize lactate is to form glucose. First, you need to know normal to know altered physiology or pathology in case of chronic alcohol consumption. That's why I always encourage students to know normal, right? Did you know that the purpose to form lactate was to regenerate? Remember? What was the purpose of lactate? Forming lactate in your body to regenerate NAD, not NADH, not NADH, please, to regenerate NAD, right? And NADH is used in glucose formation. Remember that. Oh, sorry. Lactate formation is to to regenerate NAD, and NADH is produced, sorry, in glucose formation, right? NADH is produced, right? Yes? Are you connecting? Great. So also in alcoholics, yes, NADH is produced in the step. For example, here in alcoholics, look at this. Can they, in alcoholics, due to high ratio of, this is what I was telling, that the purpose to form lactate is to regenerate NAD. But in gluconeogenesis, NADH is formed in the cells. That will help you knowing alcohol consumption, chronic alcohol consumption. So in chronic alcohol consumption, can you go forward because they have a high ratio of NADH to NAD? Can you go forward and form glucose? Can you go? No. So it's not that their precursors are missing. It's also that they have, even if they have the precursor, they can use it to form glucose. Same for the lactate alanine. If you go into the next slide. Again, lactate alanine, if the chronic due to chronic alcohol consumption, if there is a high ratio of NADH to NAD, again, can you go up to form glucose by lactate and alanine? Again, they even lactate and alanine is there, but they can use them to form glucose. So understanding and connecting, not just memorizing the step with alcohol consumption is also important. So this is the summary. With chronic alcohol consumption, do you have a high ratio of NADH to NAD? Oh, sorry. Because of that, this reaction becomes irreversible. Lactic acidosis. You cannot reutilize lactate. That will lead to, when you can't reutilize lactate in chronic alcohol consumption, primary presentation, hypoglycemia. Very good. They also cannot use other intermediates to form glucose. All in all, they have hypoglycemia unless they are treated. So biochemically relating to them, also we talked about thiamine deficiency. I have this slide because students are confused between beriberi, which is dietary thiamine deficiency, versus chronic alcoholics also have thiamine deficiency or chronic alcohol consumption. I think that is the right term. I will change it in my slides. Chronic alcohol consumption leads to thiamine deficiency. Why? Because thiamine is an important enzyme for which, thiamine is an important vitamin for which enzyme? Tell me. Thiamine, PDH. And PDH is an important energy yielding enzyme in your body. Is PDH an important energy yielding enzyme in your body? Yes. And brain is and primarily dependent on what? What for needs? Glucose. So if thiamine is deficient and PDH is not working, brain cannot do energy yielding reaction. That's why these neurological signs and symptoms, they are very characteristic of chronic alcohol consumption, of thalmoplegia, ataxia, and encephalopathy. Right? Let's do now glycogen metabolism. I need a break. Anyways, so I hope this helped you. Let's do glycogen. Glycogen is much quicker because gluconeogenesis has a lot of implication. First of all, you stick to your learning objectives. Please go and watch Dr. Binstock's slide from the focus that I have given you to clarify your doubts. I will also be there 12 to 1, Monday to Thursday in DO classroom. If you have any questions, you show up. It's optional, right? It's an outside class help. Please, first of all, there is synthesis versus degradation. Keep them very separate clearly when knowing them. Also, I always told you do only one state at a time. So tell me glycogen synthesis or breakdown, which is well-fed state? Synthesis or breakdown, which is well-fed state? Synthesis, very good. Don't mess that up. Then you know that this synthesis not just need insulin, also you cannot do any synthesis without any synthesis without ATP. So it's a high insulin and a high ATP pathway to make it complete. Secondly, the rate limiting enzyme is not branching enzyme. What's the rate limiting enzyme here? What's the rate limiting enzyme for glycogen synthesis? Glycogen synthase do its regulation. Whereas glycogen breakdown is a low insulin pathway. But please don't relate cortisol to this. What are the key players here? Glucagon and epinephrine. Cortisol was for which pathway? Low insulin state pathway, gluconeogenesis. Also here, rate limiting enzyme is debranching or glycogen phosphorylase. Rate limiting enzyme is debranching or glycogen. So keep the right enzyme in the right state, right rate limiting enzyme. Glycogen synthesis is a well-fed state pathway. I will complete all the GSDs with the pathway, and then I'm going to summarize it. Glycogen synthesis, well-fed state pathway, not just need high insulin, needs high insulin as well as high ATP, and rate-limiting enzyme is glycogen synthase. It happens in liver, muscle, or both. Where are glycogen stored? Synthesis in liver, muscle, or both. Now let's do very good both. Any differences in liver and muscles? Yes, transporters and the enzyme, as you all know, but there's no difference in glycogen synthesis. Both of them have rate limiting enzyme as glycogen synthase. Now, what are some key finding of glycogen synthase? First of all, it cannot initiate synthesis. Secondly, it can add only 1,4 bonds. That's why who comes in to add the 1,6 bonds? And UDP is required as a carrier. Very good. Very good. But it can add only 1,4 bond. So who adds 1,6 bond? Branching enzyme. Very good. So these are the two enzymes clearly. Glycogen synthesis happening in liver as well as muscle. Rate limiting enzyme synthase adds only 1,4 linkage. So what kicks in? Branching enzyme, which adds which linkages? Branching enzyme at 1,6 linkages. Now let's do GSTs. Branching enzyme deficiency is type 3 or type 4. 4 is Anderson and 3 is Cory's. Not type 3, not type 3. Branching is 4, Anderson. What will you see primarily? Glycogen with very few branches. What would you see? Glycogen with very few branches. So no, branching is type 4, Anderson, not type 3. Are you clear with that? This is glycogen synthesis, that's all. Yes, glycogen synthesis is rate limiting enzyme is your glycogen synthase. It cannot initiate synthesis, please know that. Where is glycogen synthase? I have so many. Rate limiting enzyme glycogen synthase, it cannot initiate synthesis. That's why you need a glycogenin or pre-existing glycogen fragment. UDP, somebody said very good, is a carrier, adds only 1,4, who adds 1,6 branching, right? Right? Yes. It also requires UDP. UDP is just a carrier to bring in glucose. Why there is glycogenin, I told you, because glycogen synthase cannot initiate synthesis. You need a glycogenin or a pre-existing glycogen fragment on which to add glucose. Also, 1,4 linkages, straight chain, glycogen synthase, you need branching enzyme to add 1,6. Also, glycogen is a very ideal storage form because it's not it's osmotically inert. Also, it has glucose. These are non-reducing ends at the end that can chip off glucose very quickly. That's why flight, fight, and fright are very good for getting glucose because they give you quick energy. They can be quickly chipped off from these non-reducing ends. So that's why glycogen is a preferred fuel and gives you quick energy and is used in flight, fight, and fright when you are trying to run away from a tiger, right? So yes, when you talk about synthesis, rate limiting enzyme is the synthase, adds 1,4, and branching enzyme 1,6. So see, if you see gluconeogenesis and glycogen, you are not drawing every step. You are paying attention on certain steps and certain aspects. Glycolysis TCA, it's good to draw outline. And branching enzyme deficiency now, can you correct yourself? Is type? We will do all type 4, which is Anderson. And what will you see? Primarily glycogen with very few branches, right? Also, very good. Also, let's stay positive. synthesis synthesis will be turned on by the substrate glucose 6 phosphate. Although I want to bring to your attention, because sometimes this fructose 6, 1626 all look same. Actually, the starting molecule for glycogen synthesis is glucose 1 phosphate, and product is also glucose 1 phosphate. 6 comes later or earlier, but actually the primary substrate for glycogen synthesis is glucose 1 phosphate. Product is also glucose 1 phosphate. So let's concentrate on positive. The substrate glucose 6 phosphate will turn glycogen synthesis. And did we talk about glycogen breakdown? Do you remember this calcium and AMP? What are they? Do they stimulate glycogen breakdown? Where? Where do they stimulate glycogen breakdown? Hormone independent mechanism in the muscle. Let's stay positive. So glucose 6 phosphate substrate turn on glycogen synthesis, liver and muscle. Remember calcium and AMP, hormone independent mechanism, give you quick ATP, several hundredfold times quicker. And that stimulates glycogen breakdown in the muscle. So this pathway is synthesis, the other way around is breakdown. So some of these key players, yes, you should keep in mind calcium and AMP, but what they are doing. So calcium and AMP are turning or activating glycogen breakdown where? That's also very important. So complete your sentence. This is my primary player. Calcium and AMP, hormone independent mechanism. Activating glycogen breakdown where? So it's not like, so you have to be specific. Calcium and AMP are not affecting glycogen synthesis, first of all. They are affecting glycogen degradation. Then they are affecting glycogen degradation primarily in the muscle. So everything is important. Calcium and AMP turning on glycogen breakdown in the muscle. Please don't get lost in these complex diagrams. I told you very clearly when they test you on the enzyme related to the pathway. So glycogen synthase is a pathway, enzyme for which pathway? I hope you're following my pace. Are you following my pace, everyone? Great. So glycogen synthase is the enzyme for which pathway? When they test you on enzyme glycogenesis or glycogen synthesis, there's nothing called glycogenosis. There's a glycogenesis, glycogen synthesis, or there's glycogenolysis, which is glycogen breakdown. I just want to make sure you're not connecting it to the wrong pathway. So glycogen synthase is the rate limiting enzyme for which pathway? Glycogen synthesis, also known as glycogenesis, right? And is this pathway supported by glycogen synthesis supported by insulin? Is glycogen synthesis supported by insulin? So which form glycogen synthase should be active, phosphorylated or dephosphorylated? That's all you need to know. Even if they have a separate kinase, it doesn't matter. Glycogen synthase, that fact doesn't change that it should be active in dephosphorylated form. And who always and always dephosphorylates the key enzyme? Insulin. Insulin, absolutely wonderful. You can keep looking at this slide. Every interpretation will come down to that. Does that make sense? Whether they have an additional kinase, even if glycogen synthase has additional kinase, it doesn't matter. Fact is, glycogen synthase should be active in dephosphorylated form. And who always and always dephosphorylates the key enzyme? Insulin. Does that make sense? Everybody's good? Yes? Glycogen breakdown, great. Glycogen breakdown is in the liver as well as muscle. What's the rate limiting enzyme here? The rate limiting, I will do all the GSTs here too. Then I will do a quick review of the GSTs. Glycogen breakdown is in the liver and the muscle. Yes. What is G6P? G6P is an intermediate. Glucose 6 phosphate is an intermediate. When I'm asking glycogen, rate limiting enzyme for glycogen breakdown, your answer should be G6P is not the right answer, please. What's the rate limiting enzyme for glycogen degradation in the liver as well as muscle? Glucokinase is not the right answer. Glycogen phosphorylase is the rate limiting enzyme. Again, glycogen phosphorylase only cleaves 1,4. So which enzyme you need to digest the 1,6 linkage? What additional enzyme? Debranching enzyme. So please again, But before that, as I always say, glycogen breakdown is a well-fed or a low insulin pathway. Is it a well-fed or a low insulin pathway? Low insulin pathway. Key player, glucagon, epinephrine. A cortisol, you don't talk about in glycogen degradation because trigger for glycogen degradation is flight, fight, and fright. Epinephrine release, quick energy. Cortisol takes long. It has to go inside the nucleus, inside the cell, inside the nucleus. No. So epinephrine, glucagon, glycogen. Are there any difference like synthesis in the liver and the muscle? Just a second. Can you hear me well? Can you hear me well? Oh, yeah, I don't know. Something went wrong with my internet. No worries. Great. So glycogen breakdown in the liver and the muscle, what is the difference? Please, I will update this slide in your interactive session so everything is in one slide. Glycogen breakdown in the liver and muscle, what is the difference? Sorry, what is the difference? This enzyme. Glycogen breakdown in the liver is responsible for free glucose, not in muscle. Why? Why glycogen breakdown in the muscle is not responsible for free glucose? What is missing in the muscle? Glucose 6 phosphatase. That's why please see that the product of this pathway is different in liver versus muscle. So in liver, what is the final product of glycogen degradation? What's the final? Free glucose. Free glucose, please, not just glucose, free glucose. That because there's a trap glucose, glucose 6, glucose 1, this is free glucose. Whereas product of glycogen breakdown in the muscle is not free glucose, but product of glycogen, lactate and ATP. So this is the difference. Though the rate limiting enzyme for both is same, glycogen phosphorylase, debranching is same in both, but what is the difference? Glucose 6 phosphatase is present in the liver, absent in the muscle. So the products are different. The product of glycogen breakdown in the liver is free glucose. The product of glycogen breakdown in the muscle is lactate and ATP. So let's do now glycogen storage diseases. Debranching enzyme deficiency. Is it 4 or 3? Is it 4 or 3? 4 was branching. Anderson. 3 is Corey's. Absolutely wonderful. Now let's go to glucose 6 phosphatase deficiency. This is which CSD? Glucose 6 phosphatase deficiency, 1, 2, or 3? 1, which is von Gick's disease. So tell me, type 1 GST, what should be the primary presentation? Remember, I told you in any enzyme deficiency, what happens to the product? In any enzyme deficiency, what happens to the product? They are low. So the primary presentation of von Gick's is not decreased exercise tolerance, but it is hypoglycemia. So I will summarize GSDs. Please know that there are some GSTs that affect liver and there are some GSTs on the right side that affect muscle. GSTs that affect liver or muscle, who will present primarily as hypoglycemia? GSTs that affect liver or muscle, who will present primarily as hypoglycemia? Liver. And GSTs that affect muscle, they will present as decreased exercise tolerance, and that decreased exercise tolerance is for aerobic or anaerobic exercise. That decreased exercise tolerance on the right side is to aerobic and anaerobic exercise. So be please mindful of that when you are doing GSTs. GSTs are important. So von Gick's affect liver or muscle? Von Gick's affect liver or muscle? Von Gick's disease, liver. That's why primary presentation of von Gick's disease is a type 1 GST is hypoglycemia. Now let's do this. So I've told you debranching, which one type? Debranching is which GST? Type 3. Glucose 6 phosphatase on the left side is which one? Glucose 6 phosphatase, von Gick's disease. And what is this one? Affecting glycogen breakdown in the muscle. What is this enzyme? What is this enzyme? Glycogen? What is this enzyme? Affecting glycogen phosphorylase. Muscle glycogen phosphorylase deficiency is which one type? Muscle glycogen phosphorylase is type 5. Here you will not see hypoglycemia. Please be mindful. That's why good for you to do by now. How many conditions you have seen hypoglycemia, differential, and why? So muscle glycogen phosphorylase will never present as hypoglycemia. What will be the primary presentation here? Not cardiac, not cardiac. No, that's wrong too. Decreased exercise tolerance. Yes, but it is decreased exercise tolerance. Signs and symptoms come after doing exercise. So yes, the primary presentation of glycogen breakdown in the muscle, which is this step, muscle glycogen phosphorylase deficiency, McArdle's, you will see decreased exercise tolerance to anaerobic exercise. Then secondary presentation is they should have high or low lactate and ATP. They should have high or low lactate as well as ATP, low lactate and ATP. So please, McArdle's, do you see lactic acidosis? McArdle's is this. Do you see lactic acidosis? No. They have decreased exercise tolerance and pain due to low ATP. They are exercising amidst insufficient ATP. Does that make sense? So please distinguish GSTs that affect liver versus muscle. So again, glycogen breakdown, what's the rate limiting enzyme? Glycogen phosphorylase. They only break 1,4 linkage. So what do you need? Which enzyme you need to break the 1,6 linkage? Debranching enzyme. Debranching enzyme, I told you, is what which GST? Debranching is type. Debranching is 3 chories. Debranching is 3 chories. What would you see in debranching? Glycogen with 1,6 linkages still intact. Glycogen with 1,6 linkages still intact. And branching is 4. Branching is 4. Yes. Again, stay on the positive side. Substrate, glucose 6-phosphate, turn glycogen synthesis, and calcium and AMP, they turn on what? What do they activate? Calcium and AMP activate which pathways? Synthesis or breakdown? Breakdown where? Glycogen breakdown where? In the muscle. Absolutely wonderful. I hope this is helping. Just last few slides. I'm trying to bring your attention, but also GSDs are something students are very confused with. Also, please know muscle glycogen phosphorylase A and B. Just don't be confused. A means active. That's all. Glycogen phosphorylase A means active, right? Also, calcium and AMP, they directly activate the rate limiting enzyme. What though they act at different places, one directly, one indirectly. But what's the rate limiting enzyme for glycogen degradation? So calcium and AM do not need this hormone mechanism. They are hormone independent mechanism. They just turn on quick turnaround of ATP and they activate the rate limiting enzyme glycogen phosphorylase. Please just know that. Let's stay positive. Is glycogen synthase well-fed state pathway? Is it a well-fed state pathway? So which hormone will turn it on? Which hormone will turn it on in liver and muscle? Insulin. Absolutely wonderful. Glycogen phosphorylase, it's the rate limiting for glycogen synthesis or breakdown. Is it rate limiting for synthesis or breakdown? Breakdown. So who is turning on? Low insulin state. Did I tell you talk about glucagon and epinephrine rather than cortisol for glycogen breakdown? Yes? Did Okay, and what about calcium and AMP? Let's stay positive. They are hormone independent mechanism to turn on glycogen breakdown where in the muscle. I've already told you glycogen storage disease, so I'll be very quick here. I've already enumerated every one of them. Only thing is you should know some affect liver, some affect muscle on the right side, and some affect both. Did we talk about von Gig's disease affecting liver? Did we? So that's why primary presentation of von Gig's disease is decreased exercise tolerance or hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia, absolutely wonderful. Did I tell you branching is 4? Did I tell you branching is 4? Branching enzyme deficiency is 4. You see glycogen with very few branches. Did I tell you debranching is 3? Is debranching 3? That is Cory's disease. You will see 1,6 linkages still intact. Now, what are the glycogen storage diseases? Can you name, please? Because I'm the only one talking. Tell me the GSDs that affect muscle now. Give me two GSDs that affect muscle. Not very good. Pompey's, but they affect cardiac muscles. Disease only GSD of mortality and lysosomal storage disease. The other disease, GSD that affect muscle is McArdle's. Yes, 5 and 2 affect muscles. Primarily liver, 1. Primarily liver, mainly type 1 GSDs. Muscle, 5 McArdle's, but skeletal muscle, 2 Pompey's, cardiac muscles. McArdle's or Pompey's, which can go up till adolescent, which can go up to adolescent life, up to an adult life. McArdle's. 2 is death in infancy because of cardiac involvement. Right? Very good. So they are very specific buzzwords. So I'll quickly summarize these GSTs. Okay. Type 1 affects liver. That's why primary presentation is hypoglycemia. I'll tell you just quickly in the end why they have severe fasting hypoglycemia rather than mild, but they do not have decreased exercise tolerance. There are other symptoms. I will let you know quickly. Pompey's type 2 affects cardiac muscles. Uh, GSD of mortality and lysosomal. Cory's is debranching. You will still see 1,6 linkages intact. Anderson is branching. You will see glycogen with very few branches. McArdle does not affect muscle, liver, sorry, it affects muscle. And you don't see lactate formation here. Lactate and ATP are low. Primary presentation is decreased exercise tolerance. That is also to anaerobic exercise. Dr. Binstock has not done hers. Yes, morbidity is type 1. Morbidity is type 1. Type 5 can go in adult life and is manageable. I can talk more about it. Type 5 is manageable. Type 1 is morbidity. Very poor lifestyle. 6, I will distinguish. I will tell you what is 6. I'm not sure Dr. Binstock has addressed 6 or she has addressed 1 to 5 GSTs. Has she addressed 6? GST? Oh, so I will only do 1 to 5, please. If you want to ask in office hours, I can tell you. I will not go to 6. I'm not comparing that, please. 0 or 6, but I'm not talking about 6. Let's complete this, right? Right? I will only talk about 1 to 5. So what is this GSD? Tell me. Let's do 1 to 5, please. So what is this GSDs? 1 to 5. What is this GSDs from 1 to 5? 1, it affects liver. Primary presentation is hypoglycemia. Everything is around the step. That's why the product is low and intermediates above the block is high. So everything is around the step. Look at the signs and symptoms. Is primary presentation of von Grieg's disease hypoglycemia? She did talk about Hers disease. Okay, I will explain you the difference. Don't worry. Let me finish this. Give me 2 minutes. We are done. Okay, I will tell you what's Hers disease. Let's do this. This is which type of GSD? Type 1 GSD. Everything is around the step. If you know the step, you know the signs and symptoms. That's why primary presentation in von Grieg's disease is hypoglycemia. Also, this affects liver, not muscle. Secondly, glucose 6 phosphatase is a common enzyme for which two pathway? Which two pathway? Glucose 6 phosphatase is a common enzyme for gluconeogenesis in the liver and glycogen breakdown in the liver. Absolutely wonderful. Please know that. Glucose 6 phosphatase is a common enzyme for gluconeogenesis in the liver and glycogen breakdown in the liver. Lastly, intermediates above the block, when they accumulate, they follow alternate pathway. So what is glucose 6 phosphatase now forming in the muscle? A lot of lactate. So if you see lactic acidosis, hypoglycemia, also what is accumulating in the liver? What is accumulating in the liver here? What is accumulating in the liver? Substrate. Glucose 6 phosphate, it also uses up all the phosphate and cause hepatomegaly, the liver damage. That's also seen in the von Gigg's disease. Also, lactate competes with urate for excretion. So you will also see in von Willebrand's disease, you may also see hyperuricemia. I would not say gout, hyperuricemia. But primary presentation still remains what for von Willebrand's disease instead of decreased exercise tolerance? What should be the hypoglycemia? Please don't mess up there, because what will happen if you see hypoglycemia in a question stem? Should you even pick McArdle's? If you see no. So what you do right now, when you finish the session, take hypoglycemia and see what all you have learned as a differential of hypoglycemia. So McArdle is not in the list. Make the right list. What is this? This is McArdle's. In this, McArdle's affect muscles, not cardiac, but skeletal muscle. And what is low in McArdle's disease? What is low in McArdle's disease? What is low in McArdle's disease? McArdle's glucose 1-phosphate. Give me the final products, please. Lactate and ATP. So they have low lactate. They are working against insufficient ATP. That's why they have pain and they have decreased exercise tolerance, especially pain after doing anaerobic exercise. And what should accumulate in McArdle's? In the liver and muscle. What should accumulate in McArdle's? Oh, sorry, in the muscle. Sorry. What should accumulate in McArdle's in the muscle? What is low in McArdle's in the muscle is lactate and ATP, but what should accumulate? Tell me. Which is used for diagnosis. Glycogen. Glycogen is not being used in these individuals in their muscle. So I'm just telling you the difference lastly between Her's disease and which is mild hypoglycemia, which is 6 versus 1. So is this Her's disease 6? Liver glycogen phosphorylase deficiency. Is this Her's disease? Anyone? Is this Her's liver glycogen phosphorylase? Yes? Yes or no? In this disease, is gluconeogenesis in these patients on? Is gluconeogenesis in these patients, Her's disease still on? That's why they have mild fasting hypoglycemia. Hers also affect liver like type 1 GSD. But in these patients, gluconeogenesis is still on, so they have mild fasting hypoglycemia. Whereas look at von Willebrand's disease. Is the step this one or this one? Which one is the von Willebrand's disease? This step or the last step? This step or the last step. But in von Willebrand's type 1 GSDs, both pathways are turned off or slowed down big time. That's why instead of mild, what do they have? They always have von Willebrand's is not mild, it is severe fasting hypoglycemia. I also told you the reason if Dr. Binstock has mentioned Her's disease is mild and von Willebrand's is severe fasting hypoglycemia because of that reason. So I wish you good luck and I hope this helped. And I hope I just want to keep you for an hour. That's all. Okay, I'll explain you 1 and 5 again. So 1 and 5, are you asking 1 and 5? Sorry. 1 or 5 or 1 and 6? Are you asking 1 and 5? 1 and 5. So type, okay, let's go to 1 and 5. Let's go to this chart of 1 and 5. So 1 is von Willebrand's disease, okay? It affects liver. And type 5 is McArdle. Yeah, you're welcome. 1 is von Willebrand's disease, affects liver. So the primary presentation is hypoglycemia. Also because the enzyme deficiency is glucose 6-phosphatase, which slows down not just glycogen breakdown, also gluconeogenesis in liver. That's why they have severe fasting hypoglycemia. Whereas McArdle's does not affect liver, it affects skeletal muscles. And in McArdle's disease, the individual cannot use glycogen. I told you the glycogen breakdown pathway, which gives you lactate and ATP. So lactate and ATP are low in them, and they have decreased exercise tolerance to anaerobic exercise and pain after doing anaerobic exercise because they are working against insufficient ATP. So did I clear 1 and 5? 1 is liver, 5 is muscle. Also, one differential very good is One has lactic acidosis, five does not. It's the opposite. One has lactate accumulation, five has low lactate. There are a lot of differential of one and six. One, hypoglycemia, liver. Five, muscle, decrease exercise tolerance. One, lactate accumulation. Five, low lactate. One, morbidity. Five can go to adult life by modification, lifestyle modifications. Okay, great. I wish you all good luck.
Thank
Great.
you.
I'm going to be in the class for questions Monday to Thursday. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope this helped.
Thank you.
Great.
Dr. B, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
I was wondering when you were talking about the calcium and AMP activating glycogen phosphorylase, did you mention that calcium was indirect and AMP was direct, or are they both direct?
Let's go back to the slide. First of all, I wanted your attention to that they are hormone independent mechanism, right? We
Yes.
need them when we need a very rapid several fold turn of ATP in seconds. And I was bringing to your attention to Dr. Binstock's slide because you might get lost in the the site. So site, okay, if you want to memorize, you can memorize. I'm sorry, I'm going back. But the purpose is they will directly turn on the enzyme. Do you see this slide of calcium and AMP now?
Yes.
They directly turn on glycogen degradation without this complex hormone mechanism. That's why they are known as hormone independent mechanism. Finally, they are going to activate glycogen phosphorylase. Yes, calcium does indirectly and AM does directly. That's the difference. So instead of getting lost in sight, understand the purpose. That's what my intention was. Yes, but calcium indirectly and AM directly.
Okay,
And
got
A
it.
means active. A
Got
means
you.
active, right?
Thank you so much.
Yes. Great. Anything else?
Dr. Bob, I have two questions.
Yes. Tell me.
One, tomorrow at 12, you wanted to see me, right?
So tomorrow, because there are many students who are asking for questions, I thought I can come 12 to 1. And if anyone has any questions, just come and ask me there so I can address a lot of people, right? Otherwise, I can't address, if it's 12 to 1, I've seen there are some students sitting in my office, some standing outside. It doesn't help.
Not
So
like that. Nathan, the class rep, was saying that he had a meeting with you and that I was supposed to come. I just
no
want
worries. No worries. We can talk in few minutes before the 12 to 1. In the few
Okay,
minutes.
okay.
It's not big,
Okay. And then
right?
the second thing that I had was about this. So we have a lot of clinical application in this section than we did last time. So how many questions do you think they're gonna have? Do we think that we're gonna have more clinical applications like Pompey's and like?
So see, as I told you, the pathway. First, you understand the pathway, and in the end, connect clinically. Otherwise, believe me, you will not get clinical application. Whatever clinical application Dr. Binstock has mentioned, yes, you
Mhm,
should know them because
mhm,
you know I don't talk about the exam. I told you every lecture would be tested, about 5 questions per lecture, and
okay.
NADPH2, is a part of NADPH. So it would be almost 5 to 6 there, a little more. But I think I would, on the contrary, encourage you to do the pathway to understand how I explained you. But whatever clinical application she has, yes,
Okay.
even in the last exam, though that was more mechanist, this
Yeah.
is both. the both pathways and clinical, yes.
Okay, the only reason I asked is because it was in the CV, so I was like a little confused, but thank you for clarifying.
No, CV, yeah, CV is also, actually, you can get everything in the lecture. CV is an extra resource, but
Okay.
everything that you need for clinical, they are in the lectures. You don't need to
Okay,
go into CV to know them for sure. But more you want to know is, I always give sources, but for sure, everything, if you're asking me, everything is in the lecture.
okay.
Every clinical application is there.
Because Pompey's, hers, all of the like last ones you mentioned wasn't in it was
I
in
thought somebody said hers. Pompey's is there. I cannot believe that. Pompey's
okay.
is very important. Dr. Binstock cannot miss that.
It was
I
in
can
CV when I looked today morning, so that's why I
no, Pompey's is in the lecture slide too.
okay. Okay, then I'll double check.
Pom
Maybe I missed something.
no, Pompey's is definitely in the lecture slide.
Okay.
It's and secondly, somebody said in the chat that she has done Hers disease. So maybe you go and
Hers
look.
was also in CV.
Hers can't be in CV.
Maybe we'll look
Pompey's
at
is
it together.
100% in the lecture slide. Pompey's is 100%
No,
in the lecture slide.
hers is in the CV, is what I was saying.
Hers is in the CV. That's why I explained to people who want to know it. I
Okay.
told you in the lecture slide too. You
Okay.
have to stick to Dr. Binstock's lecture slide. But DOs have CV and this is a mixed session. So if somebody will ask me Hers disease, I will explain.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, one more thing I wanted to bring to your attention is that I saw that the 24th, that 5 o'clock thing was changed.
Because it was a request from DOs.
Okay.
So I think you should talk to Shreen. This is a request from DO to change it to 5. So maybe you both can talk and tell me. I
Okay,
can.
we'll talk and tell you. I'll talk to her because we get out of class, or